morning, everyone. I'm Cloverley Lawrence from 𝐵𝐚𝐫𝐼𝐧, and I'm going to present a proposal, a concept, and a project that we're working on within 𝐵𝐚𝐫𝐼𝐧, particularly in the marine realm. And hopefully that will take perhaps just half the amount of my time. And the rest of the time, I'm going to try to pick your brains around some specific questions and get some ideas, particularly from this audience that have a vast experience with working with people. So we're particularly talking about the marine realm. And the marine protected areas specifically. So these are spaces in the ocean that have been designated as protected. They play a crucial role in conservation, in conserving and protecting marine ecosystems and biodiversity. And they're not just physical spaces of ecological importance, but they're complex, as with a lot of systems that we've seen, but particularly importance for people and the interaction between people and the environment. So the key roles around MPAs, they provide a refuge for species, they protect habitats, important areas for spawning, aggregation, feeding grounds. They promote sustainable fisheries by protecting seed stock, and then they restock adjacent areas. So many benefits and services to humans. They provide cultural, spiritual, aesthetic values, and of course, there's an economic, recreational opportunities there. Some MPAs more than others. However, they're not without their challenges. And unlike terrestrial protected areas, there are no boundaries, there are no fences. We're dealing with just, GPS, lat and long delineations. Species don't actually stay. There's a lot of movement and mobility inside and outside protection. So we can't really say we're protecting certain species, but we're providing a space where they can find refuge. And so there are some vast dissimilarities with terrestrial protection, and in terms of how we manage these spaces. So in essence, we're not actually managing the environment or the marine species. We're managing the people, the activities, and the human interactions with that space. So it's vastly an entire space for human interaction. So to highlight some of the challenges then, enforcement of these regulations in often remote environments, they're logistically challenging, they're costly. There's an interconnectedness in the marine space given the mobility of the medium. So what happens in one area impacts the adjacent area, impacts the MPA, the protected space, and even areas much distant from that. And of course, we have the challenges around climate change with rising sea temperatures, ocean acidification, sea level rise, and the storms and the damages related to that we're seeing. There's also limited knowledge sometimes about particular species' behavior, the nature of threats, and that can affect how effective our management strategies are. And above all, and particularly in South Africa, but in other marine protected areas, there are various evaluations on how these MPAs are being managed. And we have the management effectiveness tracking tool, which was sometimes incongruent with that particular marine protected area. And so you have a feeling that you're never really meeting the objectives of an MPA and the various challenges that come with that. So, and the other issue was around how do we get a better understanding of what those challenges are, and how do we better strategize, evaluate, and provide the support necessary for the managers, for people on the ground, in order to better achieve the objectives of the MPA. So around this study, we aim to collectively contribute to a comprehensive understanding of these challenges, as well as the opportunities for MPA management. And should I highlight co-management, because it's very much important, it very much relies on your neighboring activities and your stakeholders' engagements. And then, of course, the focus then on the integration of human dimensions. Some key objectives is, of course, understanding the complexities and understanding that it is MPA specific. Identify those challenges, explore opportunities. A case study, because of the area I work in, is the 𝐷𝐴𝐷𝐿 and some challenges that we have around there, and I'll talk a bit more to that in a minute. And of course, the ongoing engagement that we have with stakeholders at various levels. And then the challenges that MPA management face on the ground, often with lack of capacity, lack of resources, and lack of training. So we hope to take a multidimensional approach, starting with looking at analyzing the policies that are present, looking at literature and case studies from various other places, and of course, within ADO. For now, the idea is to use a structured questionnaire approach more broadly to get an understanding, of which then more detailed questionnaires can be created, a hybrid selection of responses and detailed information, then followed by semi-structured interviews, focus groups, particularly at relevant fora like the MPA forum that South Africa has, where a lot of the MPA managers gather, and various other MPA engagements. And the aim is really to get an idea from the people on the ground and input from them in terms of understanding what these challenges are and how better to, like I say, structure evaluation and provide the necessary support. So in the case of the ADO MPA, which is in the Eastern Cape, on the southeast side of South Africa, for those who might not know, I mean, this is a diverse environment, sandy beaches, rocky shores, the largest, the Alexander Dune Fields, the largest dune system in the Southern Hemisphere, high endemic species, percentage of endemic invertebrates and seaweeds. It provides protection for valuable resources, recreationally and commercially important species. It's got penguin or seabird colonies and important feeding areas for those birds. And it provides an important area for nature-based tourism. I mean, it has the highest bottlenose dolphin aggregation in the world. We're talking 27,000 bottlenose dolphins. So it's an incredibly important place, and it took a lot of people over a lot of time to build the case for its protection. It was proclaimed in 2019 and is now a 182,000 hectare MPA that's zoned for various uses. However, it does border 2 active ports, and it has a lot. There's an active fishery in the area, and various other impacts from humans on its borders. So the key threats that faces the ADO MPA, we're talking about oil spills, chronic and catastrophic pollution from all these various activities. There's illegal harvesting. There's a threat of non-native species introductions, and some realities to that. Underwater noise, particularly with the increased shipping, its expansion of developments. Of course, it's dealing with its fair share of climate change, and we're seeing changes in various environmental aspects around that. And of course, the management of the MPA itself and the challenges that the management have faced on the ground. So lack of capacity, training, adequate resources. So it is an important area, an essentially biodiverse important area. It's sociologically important, but then it is facing a grave set of challenges. So the idea is to look at these in more detail, unpack some of the ways in which they can be mitigated, the understandings around constant engagement, because that is what management entails at the moment, and look at ways in which things can be done better, and how can we support, both the development, but balancing it with the ecological needs of that area. I have a set of questions, and I'm not sure whether to ask it now, or should I wait for the discussion? How am I doing with time? 5 minutes? What do you think? I go for it. Okay. So this is for anyone in the audience, and I would really like your feedback, and we are being recorded, so I'll get a copy of this at the end. So, firstly, broadly, how can we balance conservation goals of MPAs with the socioeconomic needs of the communities around them? I know it's broad, but any ideas? Yes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cloverley. My name is Jessica. I live in Eastern Cape and I'm an enthusiastic user of the Addo National Park system, but also aware of quite a lot of the challenges that people are facing who are now being excluded from using the natural resources because of the new NPA. So small-scale fisheries, for example. So to answer that first question, to answer it, but to respond to it to some extent, I think would be firstly an acknowledgement that people have historically been using fisheries and related marine resources for a long time, and that the proclamation of the NPA has significant impacts on their use and their related identity as cultural users of those resources. And that you mentioned engagement a few times. I think that engagement needs to start with a listening and, as Martin said, listening and understanding that what impact the APAs will have on some of those local users of the marine resource. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask George to get it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think first you need to organize another session to answer all your questions because we won't have time to answer them in 5 minutes.
I realize that I have 8 questions, so.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and obviously because the polarization there, you talk about balance, local communities, conservation, that they are all the role players that are taking part of that connection between the park and the communities. And you can't address the problem that the park has with the communities without bringing in other stakeholders that have also an influence between the interaction between the park and the community. I don't know if you get me.
Like who?
Commercial fisheries, the tourists, whoever. They need to do the mapping of how they perceive that system to function. You need to give them voice and space, and safe space, because the problem is the lack of trust. So first, you need to build trust. You need to find ways to build trust, and then give them spaces where they feel comfortable and safe to give their opinion, because these people have been managing that area for a long time. And now there's lots of external pressure on the system, including the conservation area. But yeah, I'll just join Jessica there to say, just give them space where they can freely, and that's the most tricky things to do, is to create that space where there's trust and people feel safe to discuss together. Maybe you need to organize walk concept where you just walk with the people, go to their house, understand how they live. So it's quite a long and lengthy process. I don't know what's the state of your relationship with the community at this stage, but I would really like to do a deep listening for them to be free, because maybe you see a polarization between the park and the community, but actually the issue involves a lot more stakeholders.
Thank you.
I'm just checking how much time we have left. A minute.
Maybe
so I suggest you list all the questions.
That's a good idea, and perhaps you can take the last comment. I will just list all the questions, if you don't mind noting them, and maybe we can tackle some of them during the discussion session,
Sure.
or individually, or if you want to email me any responses, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Valerie. I think that was a great presentation. And this morning I was fascinated by the presentation about polarization. And I think one of the biggest things, particularly with that question, is really having to deal with the arrogance of science and conservation in most cases.
Yeah.
Because I find that is actually the biggest problem in terms of creating trust deficits between ourselves as conservationists and the people on the ground. And by people, I mean those communities that you are talking about, I mean, and all the other stakeholders. Because we always go to them as big brothers who know everything. And what they tell us all the time is only what they want to tell us and not everything. Because there is no trust. You know, they cannot share everything with us because there is a huge trust deficit. So in my view, and I do not know at what point we're going to get to a point where we understand that I think particularly within the scientific space, the approach has been totally a colonized approach that is very arrogant, that does not acknowledge other knowledge systems, other people as understanding as well how systems operate. And my belief is the day we get to that point, we will actually see a totally different, collaborative approach in managing these systems. And there's a statement that you made which was really, really powerful about MPs. And that was that we are not really managing anything within the system. We are simply managing the people. And what is our approach in terms of how we're managing these people? We're managing them based on the fact that we know and they know nothing. And therefore our approach all the time is that of people who are simply enforcing the laws, and some of those are unjust laws.